Joseph and Mary did not stay very long in that cold bare stable. As soon as the crowds of people began to leave Bethlehem, Joseph took Mary and the baby to the house of a friend, where they were happy and comfortable and well looked after. The shepherds had indeed told the story of the wonderful babe, of whose coming the angels had sung, and many people came to see the little child, wondering if he really were Christ the Lord, as the shepherds had said. Some were quite ready to believe what the shepherds told them, but others said, "His mother is only a village maiden, and he was born in a stable. He cannot be Christ the Lord." And they went away without believing. But Mary knew that her little son had been sent by God to do a great work for him. When the baby was 8 days old, friends came to hear what his name was to be. Of course they expected that he would be called after Joseph or after some other friend, as was usual, so they were very much surprised when Joseph held the baby in his arms and said, "He shall be called Jesus." "Jesus," they said, "why have you chosen that name for the boy?" Mary answered very quietly, "The angel told me long ago that he was to be called Jesus, for he would save his people." For the name Jesus means one who saves. Now a whole month had passed since that night of the angel's song. The people of Bethlehem had got used to these strangers from Nazareth and their little baby, and very soon they forgot all the wonderful stories they had heard and thought no more about them. One morning, very early, when the sun was scarcely up and the air was keen and fresh, Joseph saddled the donkey once again, making the seat as comfortable as he could. Then Mary came, carrying her precious little baby, holding him very close to keep him warm. Joseph helped her to mount the donkey, and they rode away out of the little town of Bethlehem, down the hill, across the valley, and up the hill on the other side, towards Jerusalem. It was still very early when the travellers arrived in Jerusalem, but they did not linger in the streets. They went on climbing up and up the steep hill on which stood the holy temple, for that was where they were going. Outside the great main gateway, many fathers and mothers were waiting to enter, and all the mothers were holding little tiny babies in their arms. When the time came, a silver trumpet was sounded, the great heavy gate swung slowly open, and all the fathers and mothers went into the beautiful courts of the temple. They were all there to present their little babies to the priest, and to bring an offering to show how glad they were that God had sent them a baby boy. Some of the fathers who were there were rich, and could afford to give a lamb, but many were poor like Joseph, and could only give a pair of doves in a little wicker cage. Soon another big gate opened at the top of a flight of great broad steps, and there stood the priest, ready to take the presents that all the mothers had brought. Holding her precious baby close, Mary went up these steps and gave her doves to the priest, who prayed that God's blessing might rest on both mother and child. Then Joseph took the baby out of Mary's arms, and going farther forward into a still holier part of the temple, he laid him in the arms of another priest, who blessed the little child and handed him back again to Joseph. When she had her little baby in her arms once more, Mary turned and went down the big broad steps. She had just arrived at the foot of them when an old man came over and spoke to her. She had never seen him before and did not know who he was, but she saw that his old face was very lovely, and she knew from the way it seemed to shine that he was a man who often drew very near to God. "May I see your little child?" he said to Mary. Then he took the baby in his arms, and as he held him, a wonderful light of gladness his face. He lifted his eyes to heaven and spoke to God, saying, "Now, O Lord, I am ready to die, for I have seen him who has come to save his people Israel." After he had praised God and blessed the little child, he handed him back to Mary, his eyes glowing with a great happiness, for he knew that he had held in his arms the very Son of God himself. Mary was so surprised at this wonderful old man and the words he had spoken that she did not know what to think. She was just moving away again when an old woman came forward and spoke to her. This old woman was called Anna. Her husband had died many, many years before, and all through these years she had spent her days in the holy temple, praying and praising and serving God with all her strength and might. About her, too, there was that light of goodness, and her voice shook for joy as she spoke her blessing upon the little child in Mary's arms, and told her how he had been sent to tell the people about God. At length Mary and Joseph left the holy temple and made their way down the hill into the streets of Jerusalem. Soon Mary mounted the little donkey again and set off across the hills back to Bethlehem. She did not speak much all the way, for she was thinking about all that had happened in the temple, and as she held her baby close, loving him with all her heart, she wondered what lay before him in the days to come.